12 Golden Age actresses who secretly wore wigs. The 12 legendary actresses who wore wigs to conceal what Hollywood never wanted you to see. They weren't just stars, they were the untouchable queens of the silver screen, worshipped for their beauty, elegance, and flawless glamour. Yet behind the dazzling lights and camera-ready perfection lay a hidden reality. Fragile hairlines, thinning locks, and the harsh toll of an industry that demanded eternal youth. Every red carpet appearance, every magazine cover was a carefully orchestrated illusion, an image crafted to keep the truth buried. But now, those secrets are about to be revealed. Step behind the curtain of old Hollywood and discover the wigs, the women, and the fragile illusions that built their legendary image. Lucille Ball. Lucille Ball, the redhead who wasn't. Her fiery hair became one of the most unforgettable trademarks in television history, yet it was more illusion than truth. Born with plain brown locks, Lucy reinvented herself into a dazzling copper-haired goddess through the magic of dye, and later, wigs. The grueling studio lights of the 1940s and 50s, endless hours of styling, and harsh chemical treatments destroyed her natural hair long before I Love Lucy took over America's living rooms. Behind the laughter, stylists battled breakage, thinning strands, and fragile roots. To save her image, Lucy's team built a secret arsenal of wigs so flawless that audiences never suspected. Her trusted stylist, Irma, even revealed that each wig was custom-made, tinted to match the exact lighting of every set, preserving the illusion of perfect, vibrant hair. But this wasn't vanity, it was survival in an industry where image meant everything. Those wigs became Lucy's hidden armor, a silent shield protecting her from criticism while keeping alive the character millions adored. Even away from the cameras, she often slipped them on, choosing to stay the eternal Lucy Ricardo instead of exposing the toll fame had taken on her real hair. The fiery red made her a legend. The wigs made her untouchable. Judy Garland. Judy Garland, her voice soared to the heavens, but her hair could never keep up with the storm of Hollywood. When she first set foot on the yellow brick road in The Wizard of Oz, she wasn't just stepping into a role. She was stepping into a relentless machine that would both immortalize her and slowly wear her down. The world adored her big brown eyes and unforgettable voice, but few noticed the private toll it all took, even on something as simple as her hair. In her youth, Judy's locks were thick and wavy, full of life. But under the punishing weight of the studio system, long shoots, endless styling, and brutal beauty regimens, her hair began to weaken. MGM controlled everything: her weight, her smile, and even the curls on her head. Day after day, her hair endured curlers, braids pulled too tight, scorching irons, and constant manipulation to maintain that sweet girl next door illusion. By her 20s, the damage was irreversible. Wigs and hairpieces became not just a requirement for roles, but a refuge for her own comfort. In her later years, her natural hair grew thin, brittle, and stubborn, unable to reflect the glamour she was forced to embody. On stage and screen, Judy wore immaculate wigs, perfectly styled to capture the sparkle her own hair could no longer provide. But here's what made Judy different: she never hid behind them. She sang through them, she acted through them, she lived through them. Her raw emotion, her vulnerability, her soul, none of it was diminished by what she wore on her head. The wigs weren't disguises. They were costumes. And Judy Garland, ever the consummate performer, never stopped giving herself completely to the spotlight, even when it cost her pieces of herself in return. Hedi Lamar. Hedi Lamar, once hailed as the most beautiful woman in the world, carried a secret that few ever knew: a closet overflowing with wigs. Her beauty was legendary, described as so flawless it almost seemed unreal. And in truth, it was. On screen, she was hypnotic, raven black waves spilling over porcelain skin, eyes glinting like polished onyx. But behind that perfection was a woman hiding a fragile truth. Hedi's natural hair was nothing like the lush mane Hollywood sold to the world. It was fine, delicate, and under the brutal glare of studio lights, it often fell flat. Years of harsh dyes, endless styling, and MGM's relentless demand for glamour only made matters worse. What audiences adored was an illusion. What Hedi saw in the mirror was hair that couldn't keep up with the image she was forced to embody. So she turned to wigs, not one or two, but an entire wardrobe of them. Crafted by the best stylists, these pieces gave her the volume, depth, and drama the studio demanded. Sometimes they were layered over her own strands, other times they replaced them completely. The rule was simple: perfection, always. Imperfection had no place in Hedi's story. At least, not the version MGM allowed the world to see. And yet, the irony was undeniable. Hedi Lamar, celebrated for her face and her hair, owed part of her beauty to what sat on a wig stand. Beneath it all, she was more than a glamorous facade. She was a brilliant inventor, a restless intellect, a woman whose genius extended far beyond the silver screen. But Hollywood never cared for that truth. They only saw the surface. And that surface, dazzling, iconic, unforgettable, was often synthetic. The most beautiful woman in the world? Yes. But some of that beauty was as manufactured as the roles she played. Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford, steel eyes, fragile hair. She built an empire on control. From the razor's edge of her eyebrows to the sculpted lines of her cheekbones, every detail was weaponized to radiate power. But beneath that Hollywood armor, beneath those steely, unflinching stares, hid a secret. Her hair was slowly vanishing. For decades, stylists tortured it in the name of glamour. Bleached, fried, curled, and reshaped sometimes multiple times a day to satisfy studio demands. By the 1950s, the damage was undeniable. Her once luxurious mane thinned to a shadow of its former self. The answer? Wigs. An entire arsenal of them. Joan didn't just save them for the screen. She wore them on red carpets, in interviews, even lounging at home. Always immaculate, always sculpted to perfection. To her, they weren't disguises. They were weapons, extensions of the image she had fought to construct. Those silhouettes became iconic. The bold curls, the sweeping waves, hairstyles designed not just to flatter but to dominate. And here's the haunting truth. Crawford almost never appeared bareheaded, even in private. Vanity, perhaps. But more than that, vulnerability. For a woman who had clawed her way from the chorus line to Oscar glory, image wasn't a luxury, it was survival. Every wig, every carefully arranged strand, was a shield against a world that devoured women the moment they faltered. Joan's wigs weren't about hiding weakness. They were about defying it. About proving that in Hollywood, power was as much illusion as reality. And Joan Crawford refused to let time, or truth, write her final act. Bette Davis. Bette Davis. Hair that couldn't match her fire. Bette Davis had a face that could silence a crowd and a voice sharp enough to slice through steel. She didn't just act, she confronted, challenged, and dared you to blink first. Her performances blazed with electricity, but behind the spotlight, her hair often couldn't withstand the heat. In her early years, her natural locks, thick, soft brown, and versatile, were everything the studios wanted. But Davis was no ordinary actress. She chased roles that shattered boundaries, and with them came punishing dye jobs, suffocating wigs, and relentless styling sessions that left little time for recovery. By the 1940s, her hair began to thin, worn down by the sheer intensity of a woman who never slowed. Instead of hiding, Davis embraced wigs, not as a cover, but as a weapon. In films like All About Eve, her wig wasn't just costume, it was character, an extension of her performance. Off-screen, they became essential. Sleek bobs, towering updos, sculpted waves. And unlike other stars, she never pretended. Davis didn't play the Hollywood illusion game. She knew the industry worshipped youth and surface beauty, but she refused to be trapped by it. So, in true Bette Davis fashion, she seized control. She chose her wigs the way she chose her roles. Bold, deliberate, unapologetic. Beneath them was a woman fiercely aware of who she was, and utterly indifferent to whether you approved. Vivien Leigh. Vivien Leigh, a beauty built on glass. Vivien Leigh wasn't just beautiful, she was otherworldly, almost too perfect to belong to this earth. As Scarlett O'Hara, she set the screen ablaze. As Blanche DuBois, she crumbled before our very eyes. Yet behind that haunting elegance was a woman as fragile as she was fierce, and her hair carried the silent scars of her battles. Her natural hair, dark, fine, and softly wavy, was never built for the brutal demands of Hollywood. On the set of Gone with the Wind, it was pulled, steamed, and scorched under blinding studio lights. When it failed to meet the studio's impossible standards, they replaced it with wigs, lavish, heavy, custom-made crowns of illusion. But the pressure didn't stop when the cameras shut off. Vivien's private life grew more complicated, and the toll on her health and spirit left its mark on her body. Stress and illness thinned her hair, forcing her to rely on wigs more and more. Yet she never complained. She wore them with the same grace and fire she gave to her most unforgettable performances. And in that, there's a heartbreaking poetry. A woman worshipped for her beauty, yet quietly depending on something artificial to preserve it. Vivien understood the irony all too well. "I'm not a film star," she once said. "I'm an actress." But the world demanded she be both. Her wigs were never just vanity, they were armor. Shields of silk and curls that hid the storms raging beneath. Glass shines, but it also cracks under pressure. Vivien Leigh shone brilliantly until her final days, and beneath every shimmering wave of hair lay a quiet, unbreakable resilience. Mae West. Mae West, the blonde bombshell who never once let the world see her without a wig. She didn't just walk into a room, she arrived, hips swaying, lips curling with wit, and a crown of platinum hair that seemed sculpted by the gods. But here's the secret, you never actually saw her real hair. Mae West was almost never, if ever, without a wig. Long before Hollywood made wigs fashionable, she turned them into her signature weapon. For Mae, wigs weren't just vanity, they were survival. Her natural hair, thin and fragile from a young age, couldn't carry the weight of the bombshell persona she built. Years of harsh bleach, endless styling, and the pressure of the spotlight only made it worse. So, Mae took control the way only Mae could. She handpicked every wig, styled many of them herself, and made sure they were as much a part of her image as her famous one-liners. But unlike her peers, Mae didn't hide it. She embraced it. Her wigs weren't just hair, they were characters. With one change of curls, she could transform from sultry siren to commanding queen. And the real Mae, that was nobody's business but hers. In an industry obsessed with youth and so-called natural beauty, Mae West proved you didn't need either to own the room. All you needed was attitude, and one damn good wig. Rita Hayworth. Rita Hayworth, the hairline that launched a legend. She was the fantasy made flesh, the slow-motion hair flip, the sultry eyes peeking out from beneath a cascade of fiery auburn waves. In the 1940s, Rita Hayworth didn't just define sex appeal, she reinvented it. But behind the shimmer of studio lights, her iconic look was no accident. It was manufactured, strand by strand. Born Margarita Cancino, she entered Hollywood with raven black hair and the poise of a dancer. Yet the studios weren't looking for heritage. They wanted glamour, something exotic but polished, seductive yet safe. So they remade her, literally. Rita endured a grueling electrolysis procedure week after week to raise her naturally low hairline, each session burning away follicles to sculpt the face Hollywood demanded. Then came the endless bleaching, curling, and scorching hours beneath hot irons until her dark locks surrendered to that unforgettable copper-red glow. On screen, it looked like magic. Off-screen, it was destruction. Years of abuse left her natural hair brittle and fragile, impossible to rely on under the unforgiving glare of cameras. The solution? Wigs, perfect illusions that the public never questioned. They weren't a choice of convenience, they were a necessity to keep the fantasy alive. Rita understood the power of illusion better than anyone. As she famously quipped, "Men go to bed with Gilda and wake up with me." The legend wasn't born in a single moment, it was engineered, frame by frame, curl by curl. And when her real hair could no longer keep up with the dream, Hollywood made sure the illusion never faltered. Elizabeth Taylor. Elizabeth Taylor, the queen crowned in diamonds and a closet full of wigs. She was born to dazzle, violet eyes that could hypnotize, porcelain skin that glowed beneath the lights, and a presence so commanding she didn't just play queens, she was one. But even queens keep secrets. Behind the glittering tiaras and legendary jewels, Elizabeth relied on wigs to preserve her aura of eternal beauty. As a child star, her thick, dark hair was the stuff of legend, so lush it sprouted a rare second row of eyelashes, an accident of genetics that only deepened her mystique. But decades under hot studio lights, relentless styling, and a string of illnesses and surgeries left their mark. By her 30s and 40s, Taylor turned more and more to wigs, not out of vanity, but out of sheer determination to control her image. Every appearance was a performance, and her wigs became her costumes. Instant glamour, transformation on demand. Some mirrored her natural look, others offered bold reinvention. Unlike so many of her peers, Liz never hid from the theatrics of it all. She embraced it. Hair, jewels, gowns. Her wigs became as iconic as her diamonds, a collection tailored to every mood, every role, every entrance. Whether real or not was irrelevant. What mattered was the effect. Because when Elizabeth Taylor walked into a room, no one questioned what was true or false. She was the moment. Greta Garbo. Greta Garbo. Even her hair became part of the mystery she left behind. She didn't just retire from Hollywood, she vanished, slipping into obscurity like a ghost fading from the screen. The woman who once held the world captive with a single glance walked away from fame and never looked back. But the retreat began long before her official disappearance. It started quietly, with her hair. Known for her sleek, sculpted beauty, Garbo was Hollywood's ultimate enigma, an untouchable goddess with icy blonde locks and shadowed eyes. Yet behind that perfection lay a fragile truth. Her natural hair, thin and ordinary by studio standards, buckled under the punishing routine of 1930s filmmaking. Endless bleaching, hot rollers, and harsh lights left it brittle, broken, and thinning. By her later films, wigs had become her hidden necessity, not flamboyant creations, but subtle, expertly made pieces that gave the illusion of volume and grace the camera demanded. Off-screen, the wigs stayed with her. In her later years, as she grew older and more reclusive, they became part of her armor, alongside the oversized sunglasses, the scarves pulled tight, the sudden exits from gatherings. Garbo never worshipped glamour. She resented it. The wigs weren't vanity, they were camouflage. Each layer of disguise gave her more distance, another barrier between herself and a public that demanded too much. She is remembered not for scandal or spectacle, but for silence, for the way she refused to play Hollywood's game. The wigs, the sunglasses, the walls she built around herself were all part of one final act, an escape. Greta Garbo didn't want to be seen. And when her own hair could no longer shield her, she chose wigs. Then, she chose silence. Marlene Dietrich. Marlene Dietrich. Every strand was strategy. She didn't just have hair, she had a weapon. In an era when women were expected to play by the rules, Dietrich rewrote them, right down to what framed her face. From her smoldering femme fatale roles to her bold androgynous suits, she transformed appearance into performance. And when her natural hair began to thin under the constant demands of reinvention, she did what every great strategist does: she adapted. Her early hair, ash blonde, fine, and fragile, was never the lush mane the Hollywood dream machine demanded. But Dietrich wasn't interested in chasing illusions of youth. Instead, she curated herself like a masterpiece. With the help of legendary stylist Sidney Guilleroff, she built a dazzling arsenal of wigs, each one sculpted to sharpen her cheekbones, capture the light, and turn her face into living cinema. She didn't hide the artifice, she embraced it. On stage, her wigs gleamed beneath the spotlights, an extension of her myth. Off stage, she rarely stepped out without one, each piece custom crafted, stored like treasure, and treated as sacred as her gowns. Even as age thinned her natural hair further, Dietrich refused to surrender the image. She didn't soften, she sharpened. For her, wigs were never deception. They were declaration. A statement that glamour wasn't something you were born with, it was something you built, one strand at a time. Lana Turner. Lana Turner, a blonde dream sculpted by Hollywood and sustained by wigs. She never chased fame, it chased her. One afternoon at a soda fountain, destiny tapped her on the shoulder, and overnight a legend was born. With platinum curls, a velvet voice, and a sultry stare, Lana embodied the very definition of the Hollywood bombshell. But behind the camera's glow, beneath those shimmering curls, a quieter battle was unfolding. In truth, Lana's natural hair was a soft chestnut brown, lovely, but far too ordinary for 1930s Hollywood, a world that demanded extraordinary. The transformation was brutal. Endless bleaching, relentless heat, and sculpted waves so perfect they seemed untouchable. On screen, she was radiant. Off-screen, her hair told another story. Brittle, thinning, breaking under the weight of Hollywood's demands. And so, the wigs came. Not as frivolous accessories, but as silent necessities. Golden masterpieces designed to keep the illusion alive. What made Lana remarkable was how seamlessly she embraced them. She didn't treat wigs as secrets or sources of shame, but as part of the armor every starlet needed to survive in an industry obsessed with perfection. They weren't just hairpieces, they were her shield, her mask, her weapon. With them, Lana remained ageless, untouchable, forever the goddess audiences expected her to be. Her beauty became myth, her wigs part of Hollywood's grand illusion. Yet beneath them lived a woman who understood exactly what the studio system demanded, and delivered it, strand by strand, flawlessly. And Lana wasn't alone. These 12 women weren't just dazzling stars, they were survivors. Icons shaped by talent and beauty, yes, but also by the crushing weight of an industry that asked too much. Their wigs weren't vanity, they were lifelines. Shields that helped them endure, create, and shine. Through it all, they gave us unforgettable performances, carved their names into history, and inspired generations. We honor them not by exposing their secrets, but by acknowledging their strength, the courage it took to maintain the illusion, and the resilience it took to live behind it. If you enjoyed this rare glimpse behind Hollywood's golden curtain, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Which story shocked you the most? And who should we uncover next? Thank you for watching, and for remembering these legends, not just for their beauty, but for the battles they fought to keep the dream alive.